make sense what the suffering was for. Cause I got out my head and I got in my bag. No time to be crying, there's money to make. I'll do what I gotta, whatever it takes. Cause I'm pushing myself to be one of the great. And my time is right now, I cannot wait.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Extreme Lifestyle Living Podcast. Now, to be honest, like, I'm always going to be changing up the way I do these podcasts because I find the biggest thing I love about these podcasts is that it's just me speaking straight from the heart, straight from the mind, straight from my personal experiences with whatever I've been through, you know. And I think that that's the biggest blessing of my job as and I hate saying a job because I really don't feel like it's a job, but you know, like the space that I'm in the career that I've got is like, you know, this is a huge fulfilling avenue of my life, you know, and I fucking love it. But I'm so excited to talk about today's topic because I think like the biggest thing with my podcast is it's always, like I said, is about what I've personally been through. That's why I hold the podcast so close to my heart, is because it's literally what I have been through. I'm giving you guys like feedback that I've gotten from my mentors, my experiences, you know, what I've learned from all these different things, right? And it's all of it is on the back end of my experiences, right? I never come on here and talk about something that I've never been through. I never come on here and talk about anything that like I haven't personally like been educated on or something along the lines that's been close to my own heart and has helped me in some way or helped someone very close to me in some way that I thought it was very impactful where I never forgot about it. I think that's the most gratifying part about quote unquote this job, you know, is this podcast. I get to really just bring that to you guys, bring that to light, bring that energy to the world just by speaking it through my own experiences, right? And today's topic is I wanted to talk about anxiety versus gratitude. And this honestly has been such a game-changing ideology for me when it comes to anxiety and gratitude because I've never compared the two together. Like literally I've never had both of them in the same conversation. Obviously I have, but what I mean like by this is like, you know, when you're anxious and you have a lot of anxiety, I've always paired that with being like nervous, like, you know, like you're being fearful or, you know, you're scared, timid, shy, or like excited, you know, because there's a big thing that like I used to compare anxiety with was excitement because there has been studies and research done that have shown that like the physical state of anxiety is similar, if not the exact same as the physical state of being excited. It's just a lot of us have been conditioned to use that physical state and that physical energy and how it feels as a negative opposed to as a positive. And so the reason why I'm explaining it that way is because every time I felt anxiety or anxious, was in an anxious state or ever struggled with this side of my life, when I heard that analogy of excitement, it really resonated with me because I remember being a kid. I used to be a very excited fucking kid. I remember like to the point that I'd be the kid that was so excited that like I got over the moon excited that I got embarrassed with how excited I got because other kids would make fun of me. And I remember like this happened to me very. I remember vivid memories I have of this, of happening from grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, grade 4. Because, you know, you're very energetic at that age, right? You're, you know what, like 5 years old and 10 years old. You're just fucking, honestly, like a young adult. Just learn with no barriers, you know? You're just fucking learning new shit every day, having fun. You're just excited. And I noticed that, like, on one side of my life, I used to be a very excited kid. And, like, as I grew up and into an adult, I kind of lost that side of me. So when I had that analogy with anxiety, be like, yo, like it's paired to excitement, it fucking changed the game for me. And the reason why I'm explaining it that way is because I've never ever compared it. Now, if we're going to jump to gratitude, on the other side, gratitude is like, for me, was always grounding. You know, gratitude always really put me in that moment, right? Like gratitude was always something to help, gratitude and affirmations, I paired those two together because gratitude is being humble for what you currently have. And then affirmations are like, you know, reaffirming to yourself the things you want to change about yourself. Like, you know, I am a good person. I do deserve a great future. I am beautiful. I do have an abundance of love. It's things like this, right? Versus a negative mindset. But however, I've never actually paired anxiety and gratitude together. But the other day I was doing research and just like, you know, because like the biggest thing with like with stuff like this is I like to do, I wouldn't say research, but I like to do like get educated on a lot of different topics, right? Because I like to have different pathways of how I'm going to have these conversations. I don't want to just get on here, hit record and fucking throw up my ideas, you know? I like to have like a really good strategy of how I'm going to bring this information to you guys because it's truly helped me. But I was reading a study the other day or a case study and watching a couple of videos on it and things like that. And they talked about anxiety and gratitude, how they cancel each other out. Like, so pretty much what it is, if you're in an anxious state or suffering from a lot of anxiety, that if you can practice gratitude, this is where like there's the research shows that when you the same part of your brain that is activated when you're very anxious and having a lot of anxiety and all those emotions, that when you practice gratitude and can really bring yourself in the moment to practice gratitude, the same part of your brain stimulates. However, they're both entirely different feelings and emotions. So if you can learn how to practice gratitude when you're in an anxious state, the science proves it will literally remove your anxiety. So this is something I started to experiment with because I used to have so much anxiety to the point that like I literally used to convince my best friends and everyone around me that did not exist to anybody else that knew me. And that was just because I was so insecure. I was so shy. I was so timid. I was just so low frequency, so low value, so low self-worth, no confidence. I just didn't feel good about myself. So I was always riding these anxiety, anxious fucking waves, right? So I've learned a lot about anxiety and a lot of different strategies on how I can handle it and be the best version of myself. So when I heard the case studies about gratitude, the same part of your brain being activated, when I already practiced a hell of a lot of gratitude, because I think gratitude is the biggest is the gateway for you to change your fucking life. Because in order for you to build a foundation in your life, you have to have a foundation to stand on. And in order to build that foundation, you got to be grateful for what you currently have, because what you currently have is your foundation, regardless of what you like. And that's why I think the simple mindset shift that I got from this case study, I think it absolutely fucking changed the way I looked at it. Because when you practice gratitude and come into the present moment and really, really, really appreciate what you have, it's literally impossible to be anxious because you're thinking about all of the great things you have. Like me right now, and I'm going to do a little bit of a gratitude exercise with you right now as you're listening. You can do it with me, right? And I used to talk about all the time. It's the 3-3-3 principle. 3 things you hear, 3 things you see, 3 things you feel, And I feel like after just saying that's funny. But I feel like with this one here, like this one has always been the backbone of my gratitude list for me to really get into the present moment if I'm not writing it down. And since I'm talking, obviously I'm not writing. So 3 things I see right now is I see out of my window, I see other townhouses in my neighborhood that live in here. I actually see, above the townhouses, which is the second thing. And I can see the horizon of all the forestry and things like that. And I can even see my car parked in front. And I can see everything inside this room before I look outside the window. So those 3 things plus that I see, so I'm grateful for those 3 things that I see, things like that, because I'm grateful that I have this car. I'm grateful I can sit here and look out this window. I'm grateful that I have the townhouses around me that I can look above and see the tree lines and stuff. This just kind of brings you into the moment. 3 things I hear is, I hear the traffic driving by, which is kind of annoys me because it used to be a quiet neighborhood and now it's not. And I also hear the chair squeaking a little bit every single time that I move back and forth. And I can also hear the wind coming through the window just a little bit, and I get that little bit of a breeze, 3 things I feel. I feel myself sitting in this chair because it's a computer chair. To be honest, it's not the most comfy. I have back problems. It fucking sucks. So I feel it. I also feel my pajamas. I feel them because they're tight around my ankles. So I can just feel those, but I can also feel the breeze on my ankles from the window. I can also feel the brisk cold air in the room in general, let alone the breeze around my ankles. So those are just like simple things that you do, is like to bring yourself into the moment and practice gratitude, because now I'm grateful for this actual present moment that we have. Now, whatever you're doing, whether you're driving, you're sitting, you're listening to this, just find 3 things around you that you're, just look at it, find it, say it, you're grateful for that. 3 things you hear, or whatever you hear, you're grateful to hear those things. Whatever you feel, you're grateful to feel those 3 things. And the crazy thing about it is that used to be the backbone of my becoming grateful and grounding myself in the moment. And when you actually do these things, you're actually not in an anxious state. So what I started to do as I started to become more anxious or experience anxiety is I started to literally do this principle and just become very grateful for what I currently have. And to be honest, it's been fucking helping so tremendously with my anxiety and my social anxiety, and just making me stay more centered, level-headed on my head to make the appropriate decisions for me in that time. I hope this resonates, because I feel like I go on a little bit of a random tangent sometimes. I don't ever mean to do that, but I'm just very, very passionate about like what I've been through, what I've experienced, and I'm very passionate about giving that knowledge to the next people, because I just truly know what it's like to suffer. And it's the small things that, I don't want to say necessarily don't make sense, but the small shifts that add up over time that you're like, damn, this really fucking made my life change. Like talking about anxiety and excitement, and to be honest, like when that first came to my mind, I remember like I don't show my emotions in a positive way very easily. And I remember like when I was anxious and I was talking to somebody about the case study we were reviewing about like anxiety and excitement. And I remember they're like, when's the most excited you've been? And I remember I was like 8 years old. My grandmother bought me a computer. I fucking started bawling my eyes out. I was so excited to go on that thing. I was like, man, I can go on there and do all these different games and things. I think I was just playing fucking pinball at that time. But I just remember like, learning about that excitement, that shift, you know what I mean? So like anything that I can give you guys in terms of a perspective shift that you can take home, take back to your life to get any more benefit out of any avenue of your life, that's what I'm fucking here for. But the second part of the case study that really broke down and really changed my perspective on this with anxiety and gratitude is there's two sides of the coin. If you want to practice gratitude and be in an abundant state and have your head on your shoulders in a good way, there's three avenues of that you can always reassure that you're focusing on. That's faith, hope, and love. I'm going to say that again because in order for you to stay in a grateful state and in a very positive state, an abundant mindset, you got to have faith, hope, and love. And it's crazy because I had a kind of a beside myself moment revelation with this one because I've always had a lot of faith and a lot of hope. Like I was blessed as a young child to have a lot of faith in better days. I even have a cross on my back because not religious, but I'm believing God in a certain way. And that's an asterisk because I'm still kind of experimenting or learning about that side of my life. But I've always had strong faith that tomorrow was always going to be better. No matter if it was going through foster care as a young child, or moving out at 17, car accident, whatever it is, I just always had faith. Like I just felt a strong, unwavering amount of faith within my system that was like, no, like it's gonna be okay. I don't know why, which led me to hope, right? I've always had hope for better days. Always had a lot of hope. I don't know why. It was just I'm very blessed to be able to have that in me, no matter what has been with me, was hope. The one thing I did lack was love. And the reason why I had this not outer body, but like beside myself experience and perspective was because that's the one thing that Emma has drilled in my life this entire duration of us being together is love. And when I paired all three of those together and understood that those, based on science and based on case studies and actual factual evidence, that faith, hope, and love is the backbone of gratitude, because then once you're faithful and you have hope for the future and you're surrounded around love, your future success is inevitable because you have the recipe for success. And that's all bridged under gratitude because you're grateful for what you have, which is that foundation we were talking about. So I thought that was so important because a lot of us struggle with like love, you know what I mean? And I'm very grateful to have Emma around. And I'm not saying I only have love because of her, but I'm saying she's opened my mind and my life to that side. So now I can even self-love myself, self-care myself, have more avenues of a relationship with myself in that regard. Hope and faith, I was able to look at that in a different perspective. And now with the case study and the studies around it proving that it's real and factual, I feel so much more confident to back up my gratitude when I'm feeling anxious, right? And the second side of that, the opposite of faith, hope, and love, is worry, doubt, and fear, right? And worry, doubt, and fear is the backbone of anxiety, right? Anxiety is only around when you're worrying about things, you're doubting yourself, and you're fearful for the future, right? And I found that's a state that I lived in for years, was worrying about absolutely fucking everything, but on a little bit of faith that I was going to get better, I was doubtful for everything. I doubt I'm going to see success in this avenue of my life. I doubt I'm going to see success in the gym. I doubt this relationship's going to do good. I doubt everything. I doubt the career advancement. I doubt whatever it is. I just very doubtful, but like 10% was just hopeful. Please change. And then fear, right? And that's why I'm saying I had that left field, not outer body experience, but that perspective was like I was always fearful, right? And I think that was the icing on the cake that really solidified this whole case study for me. I've always did research on worry and doubt. I've always did research on faith and hope and a little bit of love. And the reason why love never really resonated for me is I never experienced it before. Not talking shit about my parents and my grandmother, my mom, anyone in my family, but they've never experienced it either. So how can they provide me with something that they don't truly understand? So once I got that made a lot of sense for other things. But when we started digging into fear, and the backing of anxiety, that's when I started to notice that I lived in a fearful state. You know what I mean? And I think that was ingrained, meaning the icing on the cake, ingrained in my system, in my subconscious programming since a young child from going in and out of foster care. I was fearful all the time. Before I was 1 year old, I was beat, Now, do I remember it? Obviously fucking not. But the point is, the silver lining of that is I still had happened to me. So my body still carries that physical trauma. It's still a period of my life in that time that has happened. Same with a lot of other things that happened in my life. So I think I learned to be very fearful. And I think that's why the analogy fear, F-E-A-R, false evidence appearing real, really hit me hard and shifted me a little bit, because I'm like, oh shit, fear is just false evidence appearing real. So once I learned that like fear combated with love is the backbone of anxiety, I think that's when I really started to realize that, okay, maybe I'm just ingrained to be in a fearful state. So when I started to practice the gratitude, just to really see if the science was real, to combat the mindset or the part of the mind and the brain that has experiences anxiety, I was absolutely floored when I actually started to feel less anxiety, less like of an anxious state, and started to feel more calm, collective, and confident. So if I were you, I would honestly try it out. Try out the practicing gratitude next time you're anxious. And the funniest thing about this is like, I'm the first one to admit this sounds fucking hilarious. This whole podcast episode, you know, like next time you're anxiety, you're feeling like you're gonna have a panic attack, all these things, practice gratitude. If someone told me this 5-6 years ago, I probably would have fought them right there and then. You know what I mean? So the biggest thing I want you to take away from this is like baby steps, you know, just try to dip your toe in the water and see if you like it. Because that's why I also gave you that analogy of the 3 things you hear, 3 things you see, and 3 things you feel, or 3 things you smell. Just 3, 3, 3. Think of that principle, because that's going to help you become more aware and ground yourself in the present moment and be grateful for what you have in front of you. And then that's how you build that small foundation to get rid of the anxious state, get more into the faith, hope, and love side of your life, and get rid of all the worry, doubt, and fear. But that's all I have for today's episode. I appreciate you so much. I hope you really enjoyed this one, because I thought this one was really interesting. You know, anxiety always has a big tie to excitement, and that always gets me thrilled, because I'm like, oh shit, okay, maybe I'm excited. I'm just scared to show it. And that has changed a lot. Like, you know, going to the gym, going to meet friends, going to see my family, doing these podcast episodes, I get very anxious. But I was like, oh shit, I'm actually just excited to see these type of people and do these things. You know, so that was a game changer for me. So when I read this case study, get the backings and the factual evidence of the same part of the brain being changed with the gratitude versus anxiety, I was like, I gotta give it a fucking try. And it's been fucking blessings for me since then. And I just think, you know, I want to share that with you guys. So have a blessed fucking week. Let me know if this has helped you. And as always, I appreciate your support. I'll see you in the next episode. Let's fucking go.
Who's on my side, I don't know anymore. Cause it's more than a battle, we going to war. And losing again, I just cannot afford. I think it's my time to go even the score. What you see on the surface attached to my core. I'm stacking my paper, but feeling for more. One hell of a ride, but I'm staying on board. And now it makes sense what the suffering was for. Cause I got out my head and I got in my bag. No time to be crying, there's money to make.